right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. My name is Jeff Safaya, here with my co-host, Kevin Molnaric, and we have a very special guest today. His name is Scott Burrows, and Scott is someone that I met in Orlando. He spoke at the All-State Conference. It was the summit, and I wasn't able to see him speak. I'm very upset about it, but I was able to purchase his book, and the reason I purchased it is because so many agents came out after that speaking engagement and were just blown away by what Scott had. And so since I missed out on everything that was going on, I wanted to read a little bit and see what was going on with Scott. After I read some stuff about what he had and his story, I was like, man, Kev, we got to get him on the podcast.
Yeah.
And so, Scott, I know you're a busy guy. I know you have a lot of speaking engagements across the country because your story is very inspirational to many. So first off, I just want to thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, and real quick, right before you get going, is like Jeff came back all excited about you, Scott, and I was super annoyed. I haven't even told you yet, but I was an All-State agent for 14 years, so I've been to hundreds of events, and I didn't make that one, and that's the event that you were at. So I'm excited to hear it firsthand. Of course, I've done some research on you.
And for those of you listening,
amazing.
It's Vision, Mindset, Grit. Okay, that's the book that these All-State agents were purchasing at the event, and it's a really good book. I haven't been able to read the whole thing because I'm a slow reader, but from what I have read, it's been pretty dang cool. So, Scott, without you going over your whole speech, because I know you got a lot that goes into it, tell us a little bit about your background and where it all started.
Yeah, so I've been speaking for about 20 years or so, since 2002, I think it is when I got into the business. But so why am I a speaker? I'm an overcoming inspirational speaker, and I didn't even know that corporations had, speakers at their events, inspirational speakers at sales conferences. But I got to see someone years ago when I was actually in the industry as a financial advisor for Northwestern Mutual Life.
Yeah.
I saw a guy on stage by the name of Charlie Plum. Charlie Plum was a Navy pilot, shot down behind enemy lines in Vietnam, prisoner of war for 6 years in the same camp as the late Senator John McCain. I sat there, and there must have been, 5,000, 6,000 of us at our annual meeting in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And Charlie just wowed the crowd. You could hear pins drop for 45 minutes. But he wasn't a sales guy. He wasn't a business guy. He was sharing his story of what he overcame. And as I was sitting there watching, he inspired me. So why did he inspire me? He inspired me to do what he's doing. And the reason that is that I too have a personal story. Mm-hmm. My story in a nutshell, I suppose you can say, is at the age of 18, I was attending Florida State University. I got through my freshman year. I was a walk-on wide receiver for head coach Bobby Bowden in my last kickboxing fight. I was also a kickboxer. Was on ESPN right when ESPN was starting off in the beginning. So going into my second year, sophomore year in college, we decided to plan a beach weekend on a Friday night at St. George's Island, which is south of Tallahassee, Florida, on those gorgeous white sand beaches on the Gulf of Mexico. And I would say about 25, 30 of us went down for a long weekend just to get away, blow off steam. When we arrived at St. George's, it was not built up like it is today. It was completely dark. So when we arrived, we were asked to go find some firewood, my buddy Ed and I. And we went and we got some firewood. And on our way back, he lost control of the wheel of the car, ran off the road, hit a mound of sand, setting his car hurling into the air before tumbling back to earth, end over end. And it was in that one moment that my life, as I knew it, changed forever. I would say one of the first times that I came to that I was coherent, I wasn't, medicated up. I met Dr. Stringer, Dr. Douglas Stringer, at the Bay Medical Community Hospital in Panama City, Florida. he introduced himself to me and he said, "Hey, look, I know you can't, you're complaining, you can't move your arms, your legs, you're numb from your shoulders down to your toes. And the reason that is you were involved in an accident 2 weeks ago as passenger. You broke your neck, C6, C7, spinal cord injury, and you've been paralyzed from your chest down and diagnosed a quadriplegic." And so that's kind of where my life changed at
Yeah.
18. And so I went from this, this kid who I wasn't a great athlete. I fought for everything I fought for, but I played golf. I was on track. I mentioned karate. I got my first degree black belt at 15. But I fought for everything, literally. And then now
I
my
mean, to
life,
just be a walk-on at Florida State,
I
for sure
walked
you're
on.
a
I
fighter.
I felt that I was a wide receiver, and I really felt that I had the speed. I was a 4'6" guy. I had pretty good hands, but I can see why I wasn't recruited. Once you get there, these athletes,
Four
they're
six.
like just a little better. But it didn't bother me. I stood toe to toe and just it didn't intimidate me. I fought hard that year. We went to the Peach Bowl. I got a Peach Bowl watch.
Oh,
I think it was
wow.
Nice.
Carolina. We were 6-4 that year, and but it was fun. I got to play for Bobby Bowden before Bobby Bowden became the household name that he is today. It was about 2 years before Deion Sanders
Oh,
um,
Mm,
came on board.
wow.
crazy.
So yeah, so my life changed, and I spent 6 months in the hospital, and the neck injury was bad enough, but I had a lot of complications that are spinal related. I came down with pneumonia. I had 3 stomach ulcers that were formed from stress. I had blood clots. I had a pulmonary embolism, which is a blood clot in your right lung with the deadly pulmonary embolisms. People die of those things. I lost 45 pounds, all this in 40 days. It was just I was in the best shape of my life, and my falling apart from under me. It was just giving out. But I fought back, and I would say I fought back by leaning on what I learned from friends, families, coaches, teachers, anything I could draw upon to find the will, the grit to keep moving forward.
Mm,
And so I would say what came out of that is like the title of my book that I talk about vision, mindset, grit. And those 3 words really came to be after I was paralyzed. That's where you know what I mean? That it all came together.
sure.
Those 3 words, that was the epitome of what I did and what I do and what I talk about. And at the end of 6 months, I turned an impossible dream into a reality after being told I would be confined to a wheelchair for the rest of my life. I actually walked out of Craig Hospital in Denver, Colorado, with a pair of foam crutches and braces on my legs. And then it would take me an additional 6 years of my life, another 2,190 days to be able to walk with the simple use of a cane.
Hell yeah.
And I just never gave up. I just kept pushing the envelope, working out. Uh, and my dad, while I was laying there paralyzed, like, this is not going to prevent you from going back to college and getting your degree. Dad was pretty adamant about that. And so I went back to college. I didn't go back to Florida State. I felt it would have been too tough. I was also on the calendar of Florida State. I was Mr. September. I had a high school girlfriend that followed me there. I was in a fraternity. I was a Pike Kappa Alpha. A lot of athletes were at the time, but I had a lot of great things going for me up until I was 18.
Mm-hmm.
And they go back and it changed body and everything sitting in front of you. I felt in my mind it would have been too hard. So I left there. I graduated a few years later at the University of South Florida with a degree in finance. And a buddy of mine, while I was in college, said, if you want to turn lemons into lemonade, why don't you consider becoming a financial advisor in the insurance and financial industry? And one thing you can specialize in is disability income insurance planning for
Sure.
professionals,
Right.
small and large businesses
Right.
and corporations. And that's when I joined Northwestern Mutual Life.
Yeah. Northwestern's got a great training program, right? I mean, they're really known for their training program.
They have a great training program. I mean, if you do leave, it's something you can take with you and apply elsewhere
Yeah.
for sure.
But I take you back a moment to
Yeah.
you're laying in bed and the doctor Was that the first person you woke up to, or one of the first? And did you
So
know,
you
or
mean did I know what was going on before that doctor
yeah,
told me?
were you
Yeah.
like, hey, like I'm just
Um,
not feeling
no,
it
no, no,
right
it's a
now?
great question. I write about it in the book. We were there was another group of there was two other guys, Charlie and Scott, fraternity brothers, that were also on a scavenger hunt for firewood like we were the same night. We didn't know that though, and they witnessed the entire accident.
Mm.
Oh wow.
Okay. They got Ed out of the car, the driver's Ed Shoe. Um, they got Ed out of the car. He was fine, bumps and bruises. I believe he tore an ACL in one of his knees. And then they came over to my side. When they opened the door, I was sitting like I am right now, and I was hunched over, unconscious, and covered in blood. And as teenagers, knowing that I was hurt, not how badly I was hurt, decided to pull me out of the car to drive me to the closest hospital 50 miles away.
Mm.
On that drive, I woke up in the back seat, sitting like I am right now, strapped in with the seatbelt. My
Mm.
legs were, if you imagine sitting, my legs were turned right and they were together, but I couldn't move them. And I remember taking my arms like this, and I couldn't feel them. And I remember yelling and screaming, "Oh my God, I'm paralyzed." Then I black out.
Yeah.
What I don't remember is probably the more damage I was doing to myself being in the upright position and moving my neck around like this, not
Mm.
knowing it's been broken and I have a spinal cord injury. So we get to the first hospital. They take me out of the car, bring me into the waiting room, and put me in a seat.
They had no idea.
No one had any idea. Then they take me into the back room. I run an x-ray, realized I broke my neck and that this facility wasn't equipped to take care of me. Then I was put into an ambulance, strapped down, as you might imagine, appropriately. You know, you have your head is
Yeah.
secure, uh, to another hospital 100 miles away, if I got that right. And then I wake up again in the emergency room, and the nurse next to me is, well, first I'm being asked, can you feel us touching your toes and that type of thing? And I said yes and no. I mean, it was really weird. Everything was just off. It was just really different. And while I was going through that, there was a nurse standing to my right, and she's shaving the side of my head,
Yeah.
both sides, taking my hair clippings and putting them in a plastic bag. And I'm laying there, I'm going, "What are you doing?" And she was just smiling like nothing was wrong. And then I felt as though my head was caving in. What I didn't realize, my doctors were now placing me in spinal traction,
Yeah.
screwing two metal bolts, steel screws into my skull, a quarter of an inch thick, to
Ooh.
stabilize my neck area
Yeah.
while I was awake.
Oh my.
And it felt as though my head was in a vice grip and you were tightening down on it and you weren't letting up when I say, "Please let up." And I screamed, and my vision darkened and I blacked out.
Mm.
Yeah. Reading the book, you're explaining it now, and I'm just feel like I'm reading it again.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, you're good. So, Scott, uh, I got in an accident in seventh grade, and I don't want to say it's similar because it's not even comparable
Yeah.
to what you went through. I mean, seriously. But it's when I was reading your book, it reminded me of my accident.
Sure.
Landscaping vehicle fell on top of me. I had broken ribs, bruised lung, split kidney, lacerated liver, bleeding internally. And when I got to the hospital, they put me in a chair. And then realized at the first hospital, like, oh shoot, like we can't, like he might need surgery. Take me to another hospital. Nope. Take me to another hospital, right? And so, I went through a lot of physical and emotional um, distress. And then reading your book, it's just like one of the key quotes I took away from it was the quality of our lives is determined by the quality, sorry, of our lives is determined by the choices that we make and by focusing on those things that we can control. And
Yeah.
that's so with you. I mean, you can't control what happened. And
No, but you can control your attitude. You can control your way of thinking. You can control being positive or being negative. You know, there are things we can control, and I talk about that in the book. I talk about that to friends when we're having conversations and we're talking business. Even on stage, focus on what we have control over, which is our ability to adapt to situations as situations change.
Mm.
We have that kind of control over our lives. I firmly believe that.
How have you trained your mind that way though? Like, how are you not negative? With everything that you've been,
I don't want to say I'm not negative with everything. I mean, I'm like everybody else.
Right.
There are days when I'm like, I'll say something and a friend's like, well, wait a minute, you're that positive guy. And I'm like,
Yeah,
I
right.
hate that when they take your word, they throw them back in your face. And I'm like,
Right.
but
Isn't that
I
funny?
do, I go through tough times.
Yeah.
The news can bring you down. The
Yeah.
news can bring me down. If my business is slowing up because of, COVID, it wasn't great for my speaking business. It
Oh, right.
crushed it for 2 years. We went to virtual, but I mean, it was tough to remain positive, but you do your best. You make your adjustments to business. I found myself reading a lot, um, working out a lot. I live in Florida. We could still go outdoors. I bought an electric bike. Actually, I just did a bike ride, 20 miles. Takes me 1 hour on it. I
Fun.
can pedal, but not it. I don't pedal to assist. It just allows me to move the pedals because my
Right.
legs aren't strong enough. But if it just gives me blood flow into my hips and
Yeah,
joints.
sure.
But I bought that during COVID, and it just so there's things I can control, and I'm always looking to find things
Mm.
that I can control when circumstances change.
Good for you.
So
Yep.
let's go back even before. Like, what made you a fighter? What made you a college athlete? Who was it that
Yeah.
Yeah, and weren't you on
made?
ESPN?
Yeah, his kick for his
My
for
last
karate.
kickboxing fight was on ESPN.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Right.
um, I was born in Glenview, Illinois, which is just north of Chicago, and at the age of 5, my dad uprooted the family to Lake Geneva, Wisconsin to take a job opportunity he could not refuse. The
Mm-hmm.
golf course superintendent for Hugh Hefner's Playboy Club.
Oh, no kidding.
Okay.
Come on.
And I had to wait until I was 18 years old before he started telling me the fun stories that took place. Anyway, yeah, I'm just kidding. So anyway, so
Can you
when I was there
imagine?
as a kid at the Playboy Club, the driving range, my dad taught me the art of visualization through the game of golf.
Mm.
And so golf was my first sport, but I learned a lot about visualization. He would say something like, son, be willing to see complete success in your mind's eye first. Now imprint that outcome over and over and do it so frequently that your mind can no longer tell the difference between what you're fighting for and what is real. In doing so, it becomes your belief, which now becomes your reality. And for golf, that meant really seeing where you want the ball to be, whether it's 2 feet away, 50
Yeah.
yards away, 200 yards away. Visualize every aspect of what you're about to do playing golf, from standing there, the club of choice, how hard you're going to hit it, and so forth. So visualization for me started really, really early in life, and I found so golf was my first passion. Then, living in Lake Geneva, our next door neighbors, I was hanging out with their kids, Sean and Chad West, and their dad was a karate instructor.
Mm.
His name is Royal West. Royal is still practicing today in his 70s. He now lives in Utah. We reunited last year at a speaking event in Salt Lake,
Oh,
and I
wow.
hadn't seen
How
him in
cool.
28 years. But he follows me on Facebook and social media. So Royal went to my dad and my mom and said, "Hey, I'm an instructor and love to have your son join." And they gave their blessing, and so I did. So I learned a lot about karate. I fell in love with karate at the end of one of our first classes. I have my gi on, my white gi, my white belt, and afterwards he's like, "Hey, we're gonna go see a new movie in 1970, 1973. We're gonna see a new movie that just came out. It's a bestseller. It's called Enter the Dragon, starring who?
Yours
Bruce."
truly.
I came out of there on cloud nine, and all I wanted to do was be just like Bruce Lee. I
Oh,
wanted
yeah.
to become a black belt. I
Right.
wanted to train hard. I wanted to fight. I wanted to kickbox. And this is when I was 8 years old. So that's where some of the sporting came about it. And Royal, he used to write quotes, and one quote he wrote, and that I relied on when I was first paralyzed. He said the reason so many people fail to achieve the impossible in their lives, professionally as well, is because they view the impossible as an excuse to take action.
Mm.
So Royal taught me a lot. I leaned on him and what he said and what I learned through karate, through sports. If you have kids, I think martial arts or any sport for that matter, but it's just a great way to learn discipline, perseverance, respect others, team building. So I was fortunate enough for me as an athlete to learn a lot of these things that helped me, when I was first paralyzed and so forth.
Mm.
So at the age of 8, my dad moved the family to Florida because he had one really bad winter in Lake Geneva. And actually, I was up there years ago because I now play golf again. It was September. I said, Dad, I'm in Lake Geneva. I go, why did you ever leave? Give it 60 days. So he just kind of laid the point there. It gets really cold up there in the wintertime. So he left and came down here north of West Palm Beach, a small town called Stewart, Florida. And my dad he's no longer with us. He passed away 8 years ago. He was a golf course superintendent
Mm.
for Hugh Hefner's Playboy Club. And then he came down this way and did the same thing
Mm.
for many years. When I came down here, um, I got involved in the golf team. And in high school, I started doing track. I competed in like 6 different events and and I did this in my senior year to stay in shape to play college football. I broke 2 school records, one the triple jump, one in the 440 relay. And I took the 880 run to the state finals where I finished 7th or 8th. Not great, but I made it. First
Yeah.
year
Yeah.
trying out, right? And then I walked on and I played high school football for the first time. So I was in high school is when as a freshman is when I wanted to try out because I wanted to do a team sport as well while I
Yeah.
was doing other sports.
Wow.
So yeah, the football, came in, much later in addition to track.
Did you find yourself using visualization in all of these things, all these
I do it to
activities?
this day.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Everything I do.
everything you do.
When Charlie Plum was speaking at the Northwestern Mutual Convention,
Yeah.
I could see myself on the stage addressing those 6,000 people. I saw myself in his shoes. I didn't know if I could pull it off, but I saw it in my mind's eye.
Hmm.
9 years before I pulled the trigger.
Wow. I was recently listening to something. I can't remember who did it. I'd love to give them the credit. But it was really just talking about how the past, thinking about the past, even though that actually happened, versus visualizing the future, that the mind can't really distinguish in between the two. And so it can be your choice. Like you can decide what becomes your reality, is really kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right about the mind. And what's also great with the mind and visualization is, we have a conscious mind and we have a subconscious mind. Our conscious mind is happening right now. We're talking, we're communicating, people may be listening to this podcast. Our subconscious mind is awake 24/7.
Mm.
It's what keeps our organs going at night. You're breathing at night, but it also can help you problem solve. And if you ask, I can get in this in a moment, but if you're trying to solve a problem, you should just try it one night. Go if you're trying to whatever business wise, whatever it was, whatever your goal is, write it down at night and get your mind thinking about it. And what's great about it is that while you're sleeping, your subconscious mind is going to work to figure out a way to make it happen
Hey,
the
that's
best
cool.
that it possibly can with the tools that it has. And
Wow.
not that I could say, hey, I want to become a professional basketball player, but in my physically challenged body, that's not going to happen. Doesn't mean I can't think about it, what it would be like. But what I'm trying to say is that not everything comes to fruition.
Mm.
Your mind's got the capacity and the resources to use what it has to do its best to appease you,
Right.
if
Little
that makes
take home
sense.
activity for our listeners.
Yeah, right. A really good one.
Yeah.
But it's like, I mean, I totally believe that whatever you can perceive and that you can achieve, and likewise, like that doctor told you, whatever you perceive you cannot do, then you'll start to form all the truths around that too. And I
Yep.
remember your dad paid you a little visit, huh? Maybe talk about that for a minute. About
Sure. So, Dad, I was in Craig Hospital in Denver, Colorado. It's an amazing, amazing facility, even to date. One of the best, and even though there's a lot of really great rehab centers that have propped up over the years, but I got lucky to be at Craig. Um, my parents weren't with me at this time, and I just started getting some movement back in my arms, and I was starting to push a wheelchair. And it was awesome, man. I was on cloud nine and I'm walking around, I'm going to conquer this. I'm verbally communicating
hmm
right now, telling people, doctors, patients, I'm going to overcome this. And that's when one doctor pulled me over, I guess because of my attitude towards that. And he just said, basically, look, he said, Scott, look, being a quadriplegic, um, it's not, how do I want to say this? If you were to break your neck as an example and you sever your spinal cord in two, there's really no hope in getting movement back, similar to that of Christopher Reeves. He severed his spinal cord. If you damage it, like I did, and what most quads damage their cord, if you just nick it, it can put you in a wheelchair for the rest of your life. Just kind of be clear.
Mm.
So when this doctor came in and he said, look, I know you're pushing a chair and stuff, but you need to understand this is as good as it's going to get. It's going to be.
Ugh.
And being this invincible athlete, I don't know why, but I bought into his words, and it sent me into a really deep, dark depression.
Right.
Okay. Again, no family around me. I'm depressed, and my parents were 2,000 miles away, and I stopped taking phone calls. 4 days later, I had a deep concern for his son. Dad was able to get me on the phone, and he demanded to know what in the world was going on. And I broke down in tears, thinking that this was my challenge, my problem, my issue. I broke down and I told him what happened. And all he said was this: I was out there 2 weeks ago on your birthday. Your attitude was amazing. Your vision was crystal clear. Your mindset was unstoppable. He goes, do you recall how we celebrated your birthday? I go, yes, sir. You reached down, put your arms under my arms, and hoisted me in the upright position out of my wheelchair. And we were looking at each other eye to eye. Then he said, go back and recapture that feeling as well as that mindset, re-own it again. And in the meantime, don't be upset with me, but I am going to have a word with that doctor. And then kind of the next morning when I woke up, standing at my doorway looking back at me was Dad, letting me know his sense that everything would be okay. And I'll go one step further with this. This year, I live in Jupiter, Florida, and there's a private golf course behind me about 2 miles, Turtle Creek Country Club. My dad was a golf course superintendent at Turtle Creek Country Club for 17 years when we moved back. And I worked there when I was late high school and into college. When I come back on long weekends or this,
Yeah,
whatever it was,
sure.
I worked the golf course, and I got lucky. Let me rephrase this. The story's going to go where it's going to go, but Turtle Creek this year has a summer membership, and I now play golf again. So I joined the membership. I joined. Okay. So it's 6 months. It's discounted. Ricky Fowler belongs to this golf course,
Yeah.
right? Professional golfer.
Oh yeah.
The problem was in July, I had a electric bike. I had a small fender bender on my electric bike, and I twisted my right knee, my left knee, and my left ankle. So I couldn't use a membership. So last month, I'm with one of my best friends, Brendan McCarthy, who owns McCarthy's Pub right here in Jupiter. Brendan said, hey, the end of the bar is Tom. He's the president of Turtle Creek right now. You should go introduce yourself. So I did. I get out of my wheelchair. I introduce myself. I go, hi, I'm Scott Burrows. I was a member of Turtle Creek. And he's like, oh my God, I just heard about you in our board meeting. I go, excuse me? He goes, yeah, weren't you the guy who got hurt and couldn't use your membership this year? He goes, yeah, whatever you want, we'll forward it to next year. I said, well, thank you. That's so kind to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
I go, here's something about me that you may not know. My dad was a golf course superintendent here for 17 years. I worked at Turtle Creek. I was on the Turtle Creek health insurance plan that got me to Craig Hospital,
Oh,
that saved my
wow.
life. Because if I didn't have that back in 1983, if
Yeah.
you're not going to Craig, you're going to a nursing home to die a slow death.
Oh my gosh.
Ooh.
That's the environment it was in 1983. Then I said, the members raised $5,000 to help my dad cover any gaps, expenses the
Yeah, yeah,
insurance wouldn't pay
sure.
for. And they raised $5,000. That's in 1983 dollars.
Right.
If we inflate that now, that's about a $50,000 raise.
Yeah.
And then I said, I go, it was great. And then the next day I get an email from the manager who put together the summer membership. She goes, Scott, I meant to get back to you. I dropped the ball. Yes, the members have agreed. Forward your fee for the summer for next year. And by the way, at the board meeting, I had to do the minutes. I happened to turn to the page where we hired your dad, what his age was, what his income would be, and so forth. And the board minutes are from 1969 to 2023.
That's so
How
cool.
thick it is, but I just wanted you to know, actually, I turned to his page. I don't know why.
Oh my
So, anyways, I just
God.
that all just happened recently. So,
It'd be cool to see
Yeah.
all that.
yeah. So, it was a long-winded one. I'm sorry about that.
No, that was
No,
great.
Yeah.
as you should. No, I've been to Jupiter too and played some of those courses. I mean, beautiful. I'm jealous you live there for sure. And so those are some of your hobbies. You love to golf now. You love to bike. What are some other things you love to do?
I don't.
Scuba dive, lobstering, boating, skydiving. Um,
What about skiing?
I
Brad
do snow
Blessman?
ski.
I was impressed. Yeah, the whole skiing thing.
Yeah.
So early in the book too. I felt like.
Yeah. So, I never snow skied before my accident. And I happened to be at a Northwestern Mutual meeting with about 30 top producers. And you go for 2 week deal. And at the end of those 2 weeks, they asked three of us to give like a mountaintop talk, 15 minutes apiece, to motivate the 30 people to get out there and hit their numbers. And I spoke last because the other two guys would not speak in front of me. So I spoke last. After that, there was a guy who introduced himself to me. His name is Brad Blessman. And he said, hey, Scott, have you ever tried snow skiing? I said, no. He goes, I live in Denver. My parents have a place in Beaver Creek, Colorado, next door to Vail. He goes, I like to teach you. And I'm like, don't mess with me right now, because I'm the kind of person who will take you up on what you're saying. And it turns out
Right.
six
Sounds
months later,
familiar.
we're in Vail, Colorado, Beaver Creek. And Brad put me, so there's a disability program out in Vail, but I ski standing up with forearm crutches, like training wheels, little skis on them.
Okay.
So I get outfitted in this. I look like Edward Scissorsman. It's just, and then we go in the ski lift. I went with what scared me. I went way outside my comfort zone, and we get to the top. He took me to the top. So we're at 11,000 feet, and there's a beginner green run up that way, but still, I'm on the top of a mountain, 11,000 feet up, right? And Blessman, who's not an instructor, but he's been skiing all his life, and he felt he could teach me, and he did. And I fell down over 2 days so much, so my hips turned black and blue. I'm having Tylenol because of the pain, but I was progressing. And by the end of the 6th day, he takes me to the backside of Vail, Colorado. We're now standing on a ledge 12,000 feet above sea level, looking over a crater. They call it China Bowl. It is steep. It is treacherous. From this day, you can see miles upon miles in every single direction. 14,000 foot peaks, shade of blue I never saw before. And when he took me back there, I said, man, listen, thank you for the last couple of days. And I go, this has been absolutely amazing. And being back here, seeing this, I go, this is great. Now I'm curious, where's the ski lift to take me back down? And he said, there is no
Right.
ski lift up here to take you back down. The
Oh,
only
boy.
down is down China Bowl.
Wow.
He's like, don't be afraid. I'll be behind you. And when you fall, and you will, I'll slide in behind you, put my arms into yours, and get you back in the upright position to keep going. And we conquered China Bowl. It wasn't graceful. It took an hour and a half to get
I was
down.
about to
Oh
ask how
my
One
long.
gosh.
skier would probably take, the back bowls anywhere from 8 to 20 minutes, but it was an hour and a half, if not longer.
Wow.
And I found my running legs again when I went snow skiing. And
Nice.
I've been snow skiing pretty much every year since then. I became a huge passion in my life. Had I not met him and he gave me this opportunity, I could probably tell you, living in Florida, I would have never experienced what I've experienced skiing. And I can do the tough runs, the moguls. I can go 35, 40 miles an hour and hit the brakes. And you'd never know that I was a walking quadriplegic, which is an oxymoron. As a matter of fact, I was skiing in the Southern Dolomites in Italy one year, and halfway down the mountain, I stopped and I flipped. I have the outrigger. It's got these small skis, they're like a foot long, and they flip up and they act as crutches. So as I get down there to go get a bite to eat, three of these Italians come up and they're like, "Hey, you cheating, you cheating." I'm like, "Take away my outriggers. I'm a fish out of water, buddy." But
Wow.
skiing changed my life, and I owe that to Blessman at the
Yeah.
highest level.
But yet you ultimately still had the vision to see that you could do it, and you
The
conquered it.
vision, the mindset,
Yeah.
and the grit to not give up and to persevere, to be relentless in the pursuit
Right.
of achieving that goal.
Yeah.
And so, fast forward a little bit in the book.
Yeah.
I was just reading a little bit about this. You obviously conquered the physical state, but then there was a turning point in your life where emotional things came into play. And I remember a quote your dad used on you because you weren't doing all that great. He said, "Go watch that DVD that you gave me, and of you
Yeah.
speaking on stage," and you did.
Yeah.
And then your mindset turned around from there. And then that's how you, I think, wrote this book and accomplished a lot of other things within, a quick turnaround time.
Do you want me to tell the story behind that?
I would love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think a lot of us can feel paralyzed in many ways, paralyzed by fear, paralyzed by change. And I've experienced all that, but what I hadn't experienced is to be emotionally paralyzed. And I experienced that in my 30s when I went through a divorce. I was married almost 10 years, and my dad was encouraging me to exit the marriage a couple years prior because of things that went on in it. And I'm like, nope, I'm not going to be a statistic. I'm gonna fight this one out and do my best. And it didn't go. I made a decision to file for divorce, but I felt emotionally paralyzed. It was draining on so many different levels. I was having a tough go at it, and then my dad came over, and I said, I don't know what it is. I can't think straight. I mean, I'm not thinking business. I'm not thinking. I'm an emotional mess. And he just sat there over dinner, and he said, "You sent me a DVD. You were presenting to a sales team for Novartis, a pharmaceutical group, and you asked me to watch it and critique you. And I critiqued you years ago. And to tell you what, when I get home, I'm going to FedEx that to you. And when you do, I want you to sit down and watch it." I'm like, "Why? Why? What's the reason?" Because I believe right now more than ever, you need to start practicing what you are preaching to the world:
Mm.
vision, mindset, grit. So he FedExed it over, and when I got it at 10 a.m., I popped it in and sat back with open eyes.
Wow.
And one thing that helped turn it around was asking better questions. So what I mean by that is, and it kind of goes back to my martial arts days, but the martial arts encourages you to be a student, to always be a student, personal professional development and so forth. They also encourage you to ask, better questions, like the what questions, as opposed to the why questions. Because when we go through difficult times, it's easy to say what, why is this happening to me?
Mm-hmm.
Why did I lose a client over my competition and so forth? But I was asking why me, going through this divorce and experiencing this emotional paralysis. And I realized watching the DVD, through what I learned from martial arts that the questions we need to be asking during times of change, times of adversity, are the what questions, as in what can I learn and what can I gain by embracing adversity as opposed to resisting it. So what I had to do was shift my mindset, if you will, to say goodbye to the why questions and start incorporating the what questions. And what's cool about that is that the what questions are open-ended and they get you thinking and they can tap into the right side of your brain, the creative side. And when you're being creative, it can help you discover innovative solutions to problem solving.
Yeah.
And it can help you find the win in any situation, the positives,
That's
as opposed
awesome.
to dwelling on the obvious and overwhelming negatives. So I shifted my mindset, and that was the second time Dad came through for me, it seemed.
Yeah. That's great. Ironically, today we had a business meeting, a big business meeting, and we didn't feel like it was our best overall.
Yeah.
And yet we did. We did say, what could we do different? And we came up with some pretty good scenarios.
Yeah.
Like, if it happened again, what would we do, instead of, wondering
Yeah.
just about why?
Mhm.
And it is you get those creative juices flowing, and we had a lot of them. It was really good. But
So
that's awesome.
to piggyback on that real quick,
Yeah.
I also do safety conferences because I was not wearing my seatbelt
Okay.
when I got injured. So I get invited to deliver the vision mindset grit, but relate it more towards safety,
Yeah.
making better split second safety decisions like wearing the seatbelt and so forth. So I was talking to a group, I forgot the name of the company years ago, and the CEO, it was a workman's comp insurance, the Missouri Workman's Comp Company, whatever. It's not on the top of my head, but the CEO called. I always have a conference call before I go in and speak to learn about the group. And he goes, I was reading your book and I was intrigued about the why and what questions. He goes, here's why. He goes, one of our largest customers has 3,000 semi trucks on the road on any given day. In the last 2 years, there was two major accidents. And he showed me two pictures. One picture, the semi rolled down an embankment. The truck was shredded. And he's like, do you think he survived? I said, it doesn't look like anybody could survive that. This guy did, and he was wearing a seatbelt.
Mm.
And he goes, in the second accident, it was more of a fender bender, looking at the 40-foot, truck. It wasn't bad. And he goes, that one, it was a $9 million workman's comp claim. And the guy was not wearing a seatbelt. He became a quadriplegic.
Mm.
And he goes, after that, I was in a board meeting and I went to the board. What can we do as a board of directors to inspire one of our biggest clients' workers to never forget to wear a seatbelt? Notice what I said. What can we do? Got our creative juices going, and they came up with one of those bright orange sleeves with Velcro on it that would strap across the front of a seatbelt, right?
Right?
And we had 3,000, we had 6,000 made, one for the passenger side, sent them to the CEO of our customer who loved it, changed his safety policy, and said, if any manager sees one of our truckers driving a truck as well as a driver off of one of our lots,
Yeah.
not seeing the orange strap, immediate dismissal.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it
It all
changed
came
policy.
from a what question. So
Mm-hmm. Boy, I bet Mike Rowe would like to talk to this.
Oh yeah.
To Scott, huh? Mike, he's a buddy of ours, and
yeah,
he's in safety belt, in safety restraints at Auto
yeah,
Leave, and he loves talking about
Right. Not to
seat
mention, we
belts
just
and-
had a buddy of ours
yeah,
sadly pass away
yeah.
doing
yeah.
in a safety stunt. Actually,
I've had the
Um,
same.
something
I think
else.
most people have had, they know somebody, right? 6 degrees of separation when it comes to this.
Right.
Yeah. Something else with you, Scott, that resonated with me too, because it felt like I needed to reach out to the driver of my accident.
Yeah.
It was Ed who
Ed.
reached out to you and said that he had someone in his life, one of his friends, get in a bad accident, and he was in the hospital, and he reached out to you for help. And then you told him, I can help you. What do you need me to do? And he mentioned how he didn't have the courage to go to the hospital. And you mentioned to him, like, gotta quit, living in the past. And you learned obviously to forgive him for what he did and what happened. It was an accident. And I'm sure Ed had to, it's in his head still to this day, maybe every day. Hopefully not. But you were someone who, basically told him, quit living in the past, make peace with your past.
Right.
And that's something that me and Kevin try to do on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But we sometimes always are like, shoot, why do we do
Yeah.
that? So if you could just talk a little bit about that, because
Yeah.
that
No
was a
problem.
great line.
The backstory is um, Ed didn't handle this well,
Okay.
as you might imagine.
Yeah.
He never visited me in the hospital. He never called.
Yeah.
And first time I saw him was 2 years later on the way to a college football game. And I was walking with forearm crutches, two of them, slowly with braces on my legs. And we saw each other about 20 yards apart. We made eye contact. We nodded.
Oh,
And he turned around and walked that way with his friends.
Mm.
And I felt anger in that moment at a
yeah.
level I'd never experienced anger before. And
Oh, yeah.
I found myself that night drinking way in excess, hoping to forget. One of my best friends this day is Brendan McCarthy, and he was with me. He was not drinking. He got me home safe, pulled me out of the car, threw me over his shoulders to go to bed, to put me to bed. And I said, if I can't get through this, let my mom know that I love her. And when I woke up the next morning, I recalled what I said, and I'll usually ask an audience on stage, I mean, has anything ever happened to you in your life professionally as well that you believe has been unfair or unjust? And most people have. And I said, that's when I made a decision to let it happen. And I'll get back to that phrase in a moment. But letting it happen was let it kind of, play out. And so letting the anger move through me as opposed to defining me is what happened in that scenario. And I was able to move on with my life. I never saw Ed again. And it wasn't until my late 40s when I wrote my book. Actually, yeah, late 50 when I wrote that book that you're seeing right there. I went out, I reached out looking for Ed, and I found him on Facebook. And I friended him, and he friended me back with a text message. And the message said, Scott, it's so good to hear from you. He said, the truth is there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about what happened on St. George's Island. All I wish I could do is change what happened, but because I cannot, I've been riddled with remorse and guilt. And when I read those words, I heard a voice in the back of my mind, ease his pain. And as I texted him back, I said, Ed, if I could go back and change what happened to me, I'm not quite sure that I would.
Wow.
Based on how I responded to adversity. And I've had a pretty interesting life as a result of.
Yeah.
But then something occurred to me. I thought Ed was hoping that I would forgive him for never, ever being there. And in that email back to Ed, I did indeed forgive him. And in doing so, it not only freed Ed in many ways,
Good.
it freed me. So time went on. I wrote the book, and my dad had already, after the book was written, years later, my dad had passed away. In the morning of his funeral at 6 a.m., I get a phone call from Ed. And he's like, hey, Scott, how are you? I really need to speak with you. Even though we're Facebook friends, he had no idea that my dad passed away. He basically said one of his best friends was biking in Dallas with a helmet on, went over the handlebars, broke his neck, paralyzed from his chest down, and I don't have the courage to go visit and see him. Same.
Wow. Right. Yeah.
I didn't have the courage to see you. Can you help me
Yeah.
get through this?
Yeah.
And so I basically, as you were talking earlier, I responded that way. And you got to let go of the past. You focus on the now. You be there. You give him support, and so forth. And he did. And I think his friend actually got to a point where he was standing. I don't know if he's walking, or how bad his spinal cord injury was, but it was bad. But that was nice. Unfortunately for Ed, we lost him during COVID.
Oh, no.
So God rest his soul.
Yeah.
Well,
Heavy stuff, guys. Sorry.
Yeah, no. This has been, I mean, we want to be respectful of your time, and this has been,
Yeah.
this has been.
You want to talk? You want to talk some business? We could just roll this over. I got two little business stories we could talk about real quick if you have an interest.
Absolutely.
Of
Yeah.
what we've done. When I joined Northwestern Mutual Life, I was an agent, a financial advisor, and poured my heart and soul into it. I built a really nice business, and in my fifth year, I qualified for the $1 Million Roundtable, which is a industry award. It's an award that less than 8% of my peers achieve yearly from around the world, peers representing over 500 companies in 70 countries. It took vision, mindset, and grit to do that.
For
But
sure.
at that same time, my life changed once again. I was on my way to see a client over lunch when an 80-year-old man ran a stop sign, caught me off guard. Our cars collided. He was not hurt. I was, and I was buckled in. New injuries forced me out of the business for a bit. And that's when my little brother called, Mark. He's like, hey, man, I know you're doing some rehab right now, but he goes, I've articulated a new vision for your future professionally. I go, how so? He goes, the truth is, I need your help and expertise to expand my golf course fertilizer business into Southeast Asia. And I'm like, why there? And he said, I got a client of mine out of Chicago, just took the golf course superintendent's job at Laguna National Country Club in Singapore. It's a 36-hole golf course. He's got an annual budget of about $1 million a year to buy fertilizer, but here's a kicker. He wants something different. Custom blended fertilizers designed specifically to meet the needs of his golf course, and something the suppliers on that side of the world had no interest in pursuing whatsoever. Then he said to
Really?
my brother, if you can, the business is yours. So I did my due diligence, as you might imagine, all the moving parts it would take to make this happen.
Sure.
In the meantime, my brother had a conversation with a golf course fertilizer manufacturer here in Florida called Harrow's Fertilizer, the only manufacturer in the world at that time who took a bold risk to find a way to design and manufacture custom blends. And when they learned about our unique opportunity on the other side of the world, they were thrilled. And that's when I made a decision after the second accident to leave an industry that I was so passionate about to pursue an opportunity to grow maybe a phenomenal business with my brother. So I left the insurance and financial industry at the top. And, we went to market and um, we ended up disrupting an industry and growing a multi-million-dollar business for over 20 years before selling. And we became disruptors
That's
and
really cool.
got to go throughout Southeast Asia and so forth. But it was all about building client relationships, building trust, always doing what's right for the client, taking accountability, but it also took vision, mindset, grit to make
For
that thing happen
sure.
as well.
I was just
Mhm.
about
Let
to
me
say
tell you,
that. That was a clutch phone call by your brother.
that was a clutch phone
As you
call.
were down
It was.
again and getting injured. Man, a lot of
Yeah.
injuries
And
this
then towards the end of
podcast.
that second business is when I was it was we were working it, but I was, I wanted more. And that's when I decided. It was 9 years after I left the insurance and financial industry when I pulled out Charlie Plum's notes that I talked about
Oh
earlier
yeah.
and what he was
Yeah.
doing. And we now had the internet and oh my goodness. And so I decided to try to build a speaking business. And I started in 2002. I've been speaking almost 20 years and it's taken me all over the world a couple times.
Did it take off right away?
No,
Just like,
no. What
yeah.
business does, right?
Right.
No, it was I didn't know what to do, so I hired a presentation and an organizational coach. His name is Lou Heckler. He lives in Florida, and I hired Jane Atkinson, who's a speaker coach out of Canada, and she's the one who helped me create those three words: vision, mindset, grit. Because she's like, you really need something that sticks, something that people will remember.
Mhm.
And listening to your story, she felt those three words. And I've been using vision and mindset, not grit. Uh, but grit is a perseverance, it's resiliency. It plays into what I do. And but that's where that came into play. So I started doing that. And then I started speaking at Rotary clubs and things of that nature, small HR conferences. And next thing you know, I get an invite to go to my first corporate event was in Beaver Creek, Colorado at the Hyatt. Brad
Mhm.
Blessman was there with his father. His father was a huge $1 Million Roundtable producer. He was also the president of MDRT back when I qualified. And he was in attendance sitting next to the CEO in the mountains behind me. You can see him through the bay windows.
Oh,
This is
how
where I learned how to
cool.
snow ski
That's
with Blessman.
awesome.
So my first corporate event was a pretty emotional one on stage for me as
For
well.
sure.
And
Right.
Takes you
Blessman's sitting
back.
there, and he's 6'5". He's 230, 250, big guy. He's bawling his eyes out right
Oh,
next to the CEO of the company I was speaking to, in Investacorp. It's a broker dealer out of Miami. And then one thing led to another.
Scott.
My funnest trip was I had a manager call me, and she's like, in 2008, it was a great recession, and they want you to do 3 events: San Francisco, Gold Coast of Australia, Prague, all in January. And they flew me and my ex-wife around the world first class to do that, and we were gone for a month. And we dropped into Hong Kong. We saw some clients in international business and so forth. I got to be in Australia. I got to see the Southern Cross rise. I got to see the Milky Way rise out of the east. It was,
How
I mean,
cool.
we're in the desert. It was insane. And speaking has, you know, I've met some amazing people from frontline to CEOs, and I've seen so much of our world in the US that I would have never seen had I not chosen to take a risk.
right, right.
It's fantastic.
Wow.
So, got about a minute, 2 minutes left. Where can people find you? Obviously, you're a speaker. Can they
Yeah.
find you social media if
Um,
they want to book a speaking engagement? Do they reach out to you directly?
my manager's on there as well. So my website is www.scottburrows.com, Burrows. That'll take you to my website, my book, Vision, Mindset, Grit. If you Google that, it'll show up on Amazon. Or if you go to Amazon, you can get that. But through my website is contact information, booking information, and so forth. And I would be delighted. I've kicked off Fortune 500 conferences and national associations. I do safety conferences as well, but do a lot of sales conferences.
Yeah.
What a story.
It's been really inspiring and awesome. Thank you so much for
You're welcome.
your
I
gracious
enjoyed it. I
time.
Yeah, I mean,
hope you
we
enjoyed
accomplished a lot today, Scott. Staying positive, right?
it.
Making peace with your past,
Right.
vision, grit, mindset. I mean, everything. So
Yeah.
thanks so much for
Focus
joining
on
us.
what's yours to control.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
100%.
And it's that's what we do every day here at our business is we help employers find people that have the right vision, mindset, and grit. I mean, that's super important to have that right
It's
characteristics because you can go so far.
the way I see it, vision, mindset, grit are 3 simple yet powerful words, but when put into action with a sense of urgency, can help you create more breakthrough opportunities for yourself and achieve just so much more in both your personal and professional life. And I believe it. So
Well, we can tell. We believe you believe it.
thank you.
Well,
Pleasure.
yeah.
Blessings to all, and to your listeners. What a joy.
Hey, thanks a lot. Love to stay in touch with you too.
And let's go to McCarthy's Pub in Jupiter.
That sounds great.
We'll hit you up. Thanks, Scott.
Thank
Sounds
you.
good.
Bye.
Bye.